Hello and welcome to a big fight with a difference here. We're taking a look at a social issue, and I perhaps should have a parental guidance as well, that if you're watching this with very small children, you may want to think about that just a little bit, because we're really taking a look at an order that came out in the Madurai High Court, the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court by Justice Kirubakaran on August the 27th. And he essentially, we're going to put the order up on the screen. There it is in front of you. What he essentially said was that there should probably, before marriage, be clinical tests to check for potency, for example. So you don't have a situation where after marriage you're having people coming and filing for divorce and arguments over whether somebody is impotent or not. And that has led to a big debate that's been taking place as to whether medical tests are a good idea. And if you're having medical tests before marriage, how far should they go? And others are coming in and saying, is that going to start leading to virginity tests and what have you? So let's just get all of this out and have a discussion around this. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? He also said all of this is going to prevent not only impotence from getting married, but also prevent marriages of people suffering from dangerous and incurable diseases. And he says government should give first preference to tackling this kind of human problems. Okay, is that what the government should be doing? We've got a great panel to take a look at all aspects of this. Malvika Rajkotia, well-known advocate, Subhi Chaturvedi, activist and academician, who's professor at the Lady Shri Ram College for Women. Swaroop Sarkar joins us again, our old friend, founder of the Save the Family Foundation. So it's great to have you to have you with us. Aishwarya Bhati, advocate on record at the Supreme Court of India. And we have Anna Vetikad, who's a writer and a journalist. We also have joining us Dr. R. Bhosle, who's a consultant in sexual medicine and who's a counselor. And we have with us, joining us from Bangalore, Kumar Jagirdar, president of the Child Rights Initiative for Shared Parenting and a sociologist. Actually, why don't I start off with you, Mr. Jagirdar, because this is something you've been talking about for a while, the need to have pre-marital potency tests, and you said they should be done for both the husband and the wife.
We are welcoming this judgment of the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court, and it should be also attached as a pre-marriage counselling, wherein a package of all the tests should be done at the time of before marriage, so that because the courts are getting a lot of cases, 20 to 30% of the cases which are of this nature, that alleging impotency. And impotency is a subject which is such a personal stigma for anybody. Nobody likes to talk about it in public. And in these sort of conditions, a person, especially the husband, is alleged to be impotent. But scientifically, it is shown that the frigidity rates are very high among women also. So infertility and impotency are two different things, and both have to be taken up at the time of pre-marriage counselling. And it should be made mandatory.
You're saying there should be tests pre-marriage. Subhi, does that prospect worry you a little bit, that everyone before they get married has to go off and get these tests done?
I am pre-marriage,
just like that.
It worries me at multiple levels. We're looking at issues of agency and consent. We're looking at the idea of privacy. Even serious health conditions have to require and mandate consent. This is a classic case of intentions and the road to hell being paved through good intentions.
If what the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court becomes law, and if the government starts acting upon it, you're saying it's crazy that the state is going to be, or the judicial system is mandating that everyone has to line up and have potency tests before.
What worries me is, one, the issue in which we framed this debate was domestic violence. Then we looked at the issue of potency, which is a legal term and not a medical term. So you cannot look at determining potency. What you can determine is fertility. When you bring this debate, the counter narrative is what worries me, because you're looking at men and women as baby-making machines, and possibly the order which is framed in the language is disturbing. With all due respect, we do not wish to prevent men who are impotent from getting married. I think it's an institution which everybody should have equal access to, but it's a well-meaning statement. The problem is how we're trying to solve it. So frigidity, virginity, all of them are deeply problematic statements. We do not want this narrative to emerge.
Okay, Anna.
Well, you know, the thing is that to say the state shouldn't enter into discussions at all on marriage it makes no sense, because marriage itself is the state recognizing a union between two people. Otherwise, you could go in for a live-in relationship. You could have many alliances and not be living with those people. So, of course, the state does play a role. So the question arises whether you're looking at it, whether when you enter into a marriage, you're looking at it purely as a legal contract or not. Now, if you're looking at it purely as a legal contract and the relationship begins only afterwards, then frankly, one needs to consider whether the judge, I mean, he's clearly very well intentioned. What are the reasons that a majority of people in our country go in for marriage? Companionship, you would think, but it seems like a large number of people enter into marriage because they want to be, for legally mandated, socially sanctioned sex, and for children who are accepted as legitimate children by society.
No, but does the subtext worry you a little bit, that what he said, that then somebody who's impotent should not get married? Maybe you should say that it should be disclosed that someone is impotent, but not allowing that person to get married.
I don't think that you should. First of all, nobody has a right to tell a woman, even if a test is conducted and she decides that she wants to marry the man, because, you know, impotence could be for various reasons. It could be, it could be psychological reasons. So if she decides, then absolutely she should have a right to get married. And I don't know if we should be mandating it, but perhaps we should be recommending it, for the simple reason, Vikram, that in our country, people are allowed to get married like this. You may have never met the person you're marrying, and you may meet him or her for the first time tomorrow, and that's perfectly acceptable to our legal system and our social setup. But when people want divorce, we make it so difficult for them that sometimes perhaps there is no impotence and the woman might even be lying, because just saying, look, I can't stand the sight of him, is not good enough for our courts.
Okay, let me get you in, Aishwarya.
Well,
what do you feel?
To my mind, this is completely an outlandish idea. You can't expect, to have a mandatory potency test. Which self-righteous and self-respecting gentleman will agree to a mandatory potency test as a precondition to marry? There is a very famous saying in family law that, so long as there is love between the couple, they are not governed by any law. And as soon as the love goes out of the door, the law comes in from the window. Idea of implementation of something like this in a country where we have abysmal records of implementation, a driving license you can get without actually giving the test, without actually being there.
Yeah,
this kind of test, if you want your hospitals to be doing this potency test,
I was just
what
my mind was boggling
care?
at, with 1.3 billion people, everyone lining up to have potency test. Dr. Bhonsle, let me just ask you on the practicality of this, by the way. A potency test, can it be done reasonably effectively? Yeah. Because a lot of it actually is psychological. So how are people going to be testing for that?
Where is the question of conducting it? There is neither a single test nor even a set of tests that can confirm beyond doubt that the person is potent. Because potency, or an ability in a person to perform sexual intercourse, doesn't depend only on certain physical factors or biochemical factors, but it also depends on the situational, relational, and also psychological factors. There are three prerequisites which are emotional and situational in nature, which need to be fulfilled even though person is physically capable, for him to be able to engage into penetrative sexual act. And these situational and psychological factors can never be tested in any laboratory. That is why there cannot be any test which can confirm beyond doubt that the person is potent or person is impotent. A person may be potent with one partner but may not be potent with another partner. With the same partner also, the person may be potent at one time but may not be potent at another time. And with the same partner with whom he is towards whom he is attracted to, he may be potent in one set of circumstances, may not be in another set of circumstances.
So you're almost saying that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to actually be able to conduct these tests in the first place.
Not difficult, it is impossible.
Mr. Jagidar, let me just get Mr. Jagidar in.
No, the thing is, there should be a family counseling package before marriage, the pre-marital counseling.
No, pre-marital counseling is one thing. Pre-marital counseling I get. Mr. Jagidar, two separate things. Pre-marital counseling we get, fine. Tell them what they are doing. But we are asking now about mandatory potency tests for everyone. A man says, I am about to get married, and the court says, okay, now go off there, go into a hospital, get a potency test done, come with a certificate saying, I am not impotent, and only then you can get married. That's what we are debating out here. How do you do that?
No, there are certain, conditions where, it is not possible to repair certain diseases, like RH blood group, which can be avoided because the children born from such parents will have a problem throughout the life. And also the HIV test, like Andhra Pradesh has got a system where HIV is made compulsory. Same way the potency test for and the frigidity test, the basic parameters can be taken care.
Okay.
And because to come out of the marriage, it's very difficult. The courts are always finding it very difficult to handle so many cases in the family courts because we don't need court permission to marry, but when to exit we need court permission.
Malvika, one other question is, how far would this go? Because then theoretically, let's take this argument forward. What he says, you should test it so that you're not having a problem later and having to go for divorce. A whole bunch of people will now line up and saying, well, virginity is very important, why don't we have mandatory virginity test?
Yeah. The treatment of family law by the courts, I have a problem with that, because it is treated in a piecemeal fashion with whatever grabs the attention at that point of time, limited to the facts of that case. It then is blown up, giving a disproportionate perspective on a bigger issue of what family law is about. Now, for example, from the Madras High Court, just before this judgment, last year in September had come that premarital sex means you're married. Now, these kind of judgments, which are clearly against the grain of settled positions of law, create very confusing and very disturbing precedents. Whether we should have a test of any sort prior to marriage or not, there are settled judgments that, for example, impotency or anything, it's called concealment of a material fact. It amounts to fraud. There are some judges who have ruled that if you want to treat marriage as a contract.
So you can post facto, if you are establishing impotency, it was not really revealed, you can have the marriage
annulled. There is a fraud, etc. But there are some judgments which say it's sacred. Now, what is interesting is socially, where we have emerged from all the panelists, is we've gone beyond the realm of sacredness, including with the judge, with the Madurai court, and moved to contract.
Okay.
Which is an interesting development.
I guess the only advantage of what the court was saying earlier is that at least, I guess, if the premarital sex has happened, then the potency question has been settled one way or the other. So
that's actually
the point I'm making is that these are disjointed statements which are made at some times in the course of a hearing of that case.
Okay. Saru, what's your take?
Here is three things I would like to bring everybody's notice. Terming some men impotent without any evidence, how much dangerous nobody understand. I know a person, and many cases we are seeing, it is the woman and men for any reason have not having physical relation, but women want the divorce, but they don't want to get that thing in their own head. So terming the husband impotence, 98% cases, you please see all the judgments, not a single man has been proved impotent, and no evidence, only the verbal statement. Now,
so that's what Anna was saying, right? That it's used as
Vikram,
because
now
it's so tough to get a divorce,
I want to bring the second thing. Suppose a man terming anything about the wife, even a name calling, it is a crime.
Both parties, if they make false allegations, it
that
is
and now
ground for divorce.
Third one.
A false accusation is perjury.
That is
Umar is
giving. If the wife gives a wrongful statement saying that he's impotent and he's not, then it is perjury.
And what is
but
perjury?
judge is not doing
that.
So there is remedy in court for what you're saying.
Read the judgment. Vikram, read the judgment.
If you make a wrong statement in court
proceedings, that amounts to perjury.
We are talking of in
court. But he's saying that if a woman's made that claim and saying that the husband's impotent, there is remedy in court for what he's saying.
That also amounts to cruelty. There are judgments to say that
instead of judge doing the justice, because
but she says that the man can fight for cruelty then.
Exactly.
What?
I know the man can fight for cruelty.
And the judge hasn't made it mandatory.
If I call my wife just a name without any evidence, I would be put behind the bar.
No, you won't.
It doesn't
And the domestic violence
this is
and
carrying on.
wife is putting impotency without any evidence.
The judge hasn't mandated it.
But the wife can also be punished with what she's saying.
The judge
Under
hasn't
which law?
mandated it.
Under
The judge
which law?
has recommended.
That is the thing judge is not doing.
There are judgments to say that false accusations amount to cruelty. In addition, them amount to perjury.
That is the problem. See, the argument judge has given, I am just having, Kumar is giving one perspective. Judge idea to reduce the divorce, this test will reduce the divorce. But judge do not understand this allegation is false, fabricated. If judge started punishing automatically such allegation will not come.
Can I
Now
just-
today you will do this test, tomorrow
Okay.
they will put 377. What you will do?
Okay.
I think the issue that led to this judgment was the issue of domestic violence. I'd like to see more conversations around both marital rape and potency. Let's get a few facts clear and straightforward right up there, that such a test, doctors, clinical psychologists have clearly spelt it out for us, is not possible. You cannot find out whether a man is potent or not. There will be no certificate granted. So as they say, you can take the sample semen and you can determine fertility. What is worrisome is conversations about frigidity, conversations about
Exactly.
Because that is
virginity.
related to a man. That's
why the problem.
Like you are,
Physically
no,
nobody is talking.
there's a problem about
Physically
it
nobody is
only.
talking.
Psychological.
Impotency is
But-
talking.
Because it's purely
Like,
psychological.
what
You
The
don't
judge has
understand
told
the difference
both.
between the
Judge has told
Sorry.
both. But
I think
how
theoretically
can
we'll argue that both are
We were
psychological.
discussing marriage.
In a large
That
ma-
is purely
Hang
psychological.
on,
But
can I-
no,
We
Can
were
I-
discussing marriage, and the issue is that it has to be about the freedom of choice. So despite a man being impotent, for whatever that's worth, if they decide to get married, the framing of the judgment is worrisome.
So long as that material fact that she said is not
Is
concealed.
not concealed.
It's not
It's
concealed,
not
but then it becomes
Fair
fraud.
point.
All right, Mr. Jagirdar.
Yes, see, there is no survey done in India, not some proper studies has been done. The USA, it is found that 44% of the women there have got sexual dysfunction. Okay,
that
and
the source
you
of
know,
the survey?
just imagine a situation in India that there is no domestic violence. A case cannot be put by
these
the husband
figures get
against the wife.
cited, but
If he
I'd like
talks
to know
about,
what
you know, that
source.
my wife is not cooperating, he will be booked under Domestic Violence Act. And you know, she will put a case that you are outraging my modesty. It is just not possible to exit from a bad marriage. The man has to suffer throughout his life. Please understand that situation. So why
Okay, Malvika wants to say something to you.
There is a
Malvika.
problem with the womb, you know.
When he says my wife is not cooperating,
I
she
know.
has a right not to cooperate.
Men
That
also have,
cannot
ma'am.
be a
Men
complaint.
also had not
And
cooperating.
then to force a
But if men not cooperating, impotent.
then to force
If wife is not
cooperation.
cooperating, he is not
he
impotent.
can't-
Why?
It is
You
the
see, in the
inability.
name of
If
this,
man is not cooperating, he is
I'm-
impotent.
I'm-
If woman is not cooperating, he is not
don't be
impotent,
like
ma'am.
this. This is
No,
not
no,
either.
ma'am.
It's a civilized
You,
Would
this
you
is the
let us-
discrimination. This
Would
is
you-
the
would you let
discrimination
her finish?
that judge has made.
Okay, wait. I'm trying
So
to figure
to
out.
force cooperation is obviously marital rape, which
That's
today
right.
at this moment is not an offence.
So
I find it interesting that there is a complaint to say my wife is not cooperating. Now
Okay.
that
But- so
speaks
I'm sorry,
of a
I'm just trying to-
psychological subtext,
I'm just trying to get my own-
which, as you
I'm-
say, is
Hang on.
worrying
I'm
with
just
regard
trying
to
to
an
get-
attitude.
I'm trying to get my own head around this now. So let's get this thing straight. Yes, you are right. Nobody can force his wife to have sex, right? Because that counts as marital rape, and you can't force that.
Well, it's
How
not
then-
an offence.
It
it's
is
not
under
a
domestic
criminal
violence
You
offense,
can.
ma'am.
But
Forced sexual
all right,
is a
fine.
domestic
But
violence.
then if it comes down to impotency, is that a ground for divorce?
Yes, it's a
It's a ground for divorce. That if the wife refuses to have sex, is
Yes,
it ground
it's
for
a
a
ground
divorce?
for divorce.
Just as impotency is.
No,
Yes.
impotency is a ground for annulment under section 12
Null
of the
and
Hindu
void.
If the
law.
wife
that's at
refuses
the
to have
time
sex,
of
is it a ground
marriage.
for
Vikram, you
Yes,
annulment?
that
cannot say
amounts to
after 5
cruelty.
years my husband
No,
has
no,
Because
no, no, no,
conjugal
no.
rights-
Sir, I'm just trying to get the legality around this.
Conjugal rights are inherent to matrimony.
Yes.
And
So if the husband refuses to have sex from
either
grounds of
party,
impotence,
if either party refuses,
annulment.
if refuses and abstains from the effective conjugal rights, which is sex, so if that happens without any justiciable reason, that amounts to cruelty. There are enough
Yeah,
and
And
more
it's a
that
ground
is
judgments.
for
not
annulment.
It's a divorce.
Impotency is a ground for annulment. Those
what happens if
marriages.
within that 1 year the wife says I refuse to have sex with you?
You
Then,
can
No,
get
so
to
that the
marital.
ground for divorce is already there.
but it can't be annulled on that basis.
No, that's not annulment.
Okay.
That is a cruelty for a ground for divorce.
All right. Should there be any effort made to try and establish sexual compatibility before a marriage, or is that something which is impossible to do to start with?
Some of the tests which we do for fertility also tell something about the potency of the person or his sexual capability. But as I said earlier, it cannot be confirmed beyond doubt. There are hormone tests which can be done, which can tell us what kind of sexuality the person has, what kind of libido he has, what kind of sexual desire he has, whether he is capable of getting aroused, whether he is capable of getting erection, whether he is capable of impregnating a woman. These can be tested. But as far as potency is concerned, it depends on several factors. Not all can be tested in a laboratory.
Let's just try and broaden this a little bit. The entire question of doing tests before, is that something which should be done at all? Because as I'm saying, we started this off, this judgment only talks about potency tests. then I'm sure a whole bunch of people will come out and say, what about virginity test?
Yeah.
What about XYZ test?
I think,
Do you do this or not?
like I said, making it mandatory might be problematic, but recommending it strongly, I don't see any problem with it. Because if
You
among
would have a
other
problem, for
things,
example, of recommending virginity test if the husband
we
said
have
it's
but
a
something
if
problem.
somebody
We have a huge
demands a
problem.
virginity test and a woman doesn't have self-respect and says she wants to
Will be
do the
put behind the
virginity
bar.
test, who are you and I to deny
But
it?
it's
I
not
mean,
about
but-
self-respect,
but
it's about
Ma'am,
you
but
have a
that
but
is
choice
she
as
might,
a
against the
man.
no, please
modesty
allow
of the
me to,
woman.
please allow me to complete what I'm saying. But I'm saying because, there are issues of domestic violence that happen after marriage in cases where, for instance, a man is aware that he is impotent and he got into a marriage because he didn't want to admit to his parents that he was impotent, and he thought, like every good Indian bride, his wife would not protest, and that has led to domestic violence. Now, at least in the case of some enlightened women, if there was constant counseling for people not to take marriage so lightly, so that a woman might say, okay, let's go in for this test, and if nothing else, if a man is aware that he's impotent, he might then opt out of the marriage because of the now, and I want to
Or he should
clarify
just
because
disclose
Dr.
the fact.
Because I want to clarify
Vikram,
what
I
Dr.
have a
Bhosle
point
is saying is
to make.
not that there are no tests. What he's saying is that there is no test that proves beyond reasonable doubt and proves 100%. Problem with, of course, making it mandatory, Vikram, is then you have revenge responses like Mr. Swaroop's, with all due respect, who are saying, well, you know what, if you have potency tests, then we must test for the frigidity, we must test for virginity, we must. But
No,
these are
virginity we have not
completely
told.
different.
Sorry,
You mentioned
virginity
virginity.
I have not
You
told.
mentioned virginity.
Virginity,
You
you will
mentioned
put behind the bar.
something to
Virginity, ma'am,
You
don't
mentioned-
I have not asked
you
virginity.
mentioned virginity.
I asked
You mentioned
frigidity.
virginity. You
I asked
mentioned
frigidity,
virginity.
ma'am.
And
Please
also-
repeat it.
And also, he's not
If
seeing the
any man
difference.
asks for virginity, he will be put
And
behind
he's
the bar.
also not seeing
That is
the
the law of
difference.
this land.
Please
You
allow me to
cannot
complete.
ask.
I did not cut in. And also he's failing to see the difference between impotence and frigidity, which is that frigidity is almost entirely psychological, whereas in the
So
case of
is
impotence,
potency.
while there is, of course, there's a large degree of psychological factors involved, it's not that alone, as Dr. Bhosle will. So, I mean, it's not
Okay,
like
hang on.
saying,
Can
let's
I
punish
take you
you
up?
for this.
We have,
And
we have Dr. Vinod Raina out here, the senior sexologist right here in the audience. She said that there's a difference between the two, but it's also we often hear that even in the case of impotency, a very large percentage of the time it is psychological and it's often temporary. Would you agree with that?
Basically, 99% times the patient is having temporary impotency. If a person is having some sort of a depression, or if he is not having job, or he is having some problem with the family, so definitely he will not be able to perform. If a patient is suffering from impotency, we can treat him 4 to 5 months and he will be totally fine.
All right,
Can I
can
come in?
Yeah.
Just had a short
I would
point
like
to
to
make.
clarify what
Her first,
she was
then you.
telling.
Yeah.
Just a minute. But
So,
Frigidity-
Let us speak.
Can I
Let
just
her speak first, then you.
just a
yeah.
minute.
So I'm kind of worried because when we're talking about laws mandate a certain right or a certain principle or a certain way of life which is then guaranteed in the constitution. There's a judgment which is then going to be quoted. When we're talking about women who can fight for their rights, doing something like this is not necessary or required because they will speak and engage with each other and get a test done. It is about individual choices. This is not respite from cruelty. My worry is if we propagate something like this, then we're saying that you do not have rights over your bodies. You want to do a test, go and do a test.
Okay.
But this is not either ground for mitigating
it shouldn't be something there which is there in court. Dr. Bhosle, you were trying to say something.
There is no test that can confirm or rule out virginity in a woman. There is no test. Presence of hymen or absence of hymen is all that they look for, and it doesn't say anything. There is a penetration, but hymen doesn't get ruptured, or hymen may be ruptured even though woman may not have ever had any penetrative act. So there is nothing like virginity test that exists anywhere in the world. And as far as frigidity is also concerned, it is a psychological state. It is not a physical condition. So it can never be tested and confirmed or ruled out by doing any test for frigidity also.
I'm just trying to, now I want to broaden this into broader questions of whether there should be some level of testing for something or the other, compatibility if nothing else before marriage. But you want to make a quick point.
Just quickly want to say that this dialogue, both those judgments, the earlier one and now, reduces marriage to a libidinous connection.
That's right.
And
But that's the way a lot of people do view marriage. I hate to break it to you. You know,
it
other than
is
companionship. It's an
the
important,
whole
it is an important component of
but
marriage.
it's not all that there is.
It
Fine,
isn't
but then that
just
is somebody's
agency
choice to say
practice.
that I want the other aspects of
Which
marriage,
is
but
how
not
she
this.
talks about
It isn't
agency, and
just-
that's quite right. But we can't just all be fodder to
Okay, fair enough.
libidinous
So,
connections.
Vikram, what I would like to
Do you
say,
view marriage as a purely libidinous connection, as she said? Is the first
any test, if the man asks, it is a crime. He will put 498 a dowry.
I
If he refuse to,
disagree
if he
very,
refuse to
very
marry,
strongly.
when
I
the
don't
woman,
think it
when
is
the
that
woman
bad
is
for
asking,
men.
I have the guys. Woman has asked for the test. The guy has done the test also. You want that guy, I can bring also. But woman has not done any test. Woman had not done any
But what
test.
is
Now,
the
what is
equivalent
happening?
test?
Please try to
What is the
understand.
equivalent
Terming
test? Why are
someone
we even
impotent,
talking? Dr. Jose
terming
just
someone
pointed out
impotent,
that
the
rigidity
best
is
way.
a completely
If the man is
psychological
not
condition.
impotent, you terming me impotent is the best way to make him impotent.